finishing up Rule 14. We're near the end of it. We'll probably won't finish today, but we should finish next week for sure. Let me repeat the rule again. The sound swells out. The hour of danger to the soul courageous draweth near. The waters have not hurt the white creator, and naught could drown nor drench him. Danger from fire and flame menaces now, and dimly yet the rising smoke is seen. Let him again after the cycle of peace call upon the solar angel. Anybody got an idea what he means by danger from fire and flame menaces now?
For one thing, if you create an obsessing thought form, it can cause problems. It can obsess you.
Yeah. So he says the waters have not hurt the white creator. So in other words, he's navigated the emotional and astral world, and then he's got to deal with the higher fires of spirit as they manifest through his centers and everything. And if they are not managed correctly, they can produce danger, insanity, sickness, illness, all kinds of problems if you have too much fire at one time beyond your ability to handle the increase in fire. Now, as a person progresses along the path, the amount of fire that he handles increases. And it's a little bit like a light. If it's you turn on too much light at one time, it's blinding. But if you turn it on gradually, you can withstand seeing quite a bit of light. And so it's like that with energy. When all the centers are activated properly, the person has a tremendous amount of spiritual fire. But that spiritual fire has to be turned on, so to speak, gradually and in the right sequence, or else it can be dangerous. So that's what it means by danger from fire and flame menaces now. And thus after the cycle, PC has to call upon the solar angel to help protect him. Yeah.
I think also that's in reference to turning on the fire of the chakras, which means that if you don't balance, if they're not balanced right and turned on properly, same thing can happen. You can go insane, or all the bad things that can happen.
That's how the spiritual fires manifest to us, is through our centers. You're right there. Matter of fact, that's right along with what we're going to be talking about. So good point. Okay, he says he was talking about the different things that we have to do to overcome all things and become a master and master ourselves. And he says, let's see where I left off here. He says a paradoxical situation is brought about from the fact that his disciple is told to inquire of the way, and yet there is none to tell him. Those who know the way may not speak, knowing that the path is constructed by the aspirant, as the spinner spins its web out of the center of his own being. Thus, only those souls flower forth into the depths in any specific generation who have trodden the winepress of the wrath of God alone, quoting the words applying to Jesus there, or who, in other words, have worked out their karma alone, who have intelligently taken up the task of treading the path. Now, sometimes when he's emphasizing some things, he emphasizes it to, if people look at it in black and white, they may get the wrong idea. And that is, we're never completely alone. We always have other people to teach us. But there's certain things a teacher and other people can help us with. And then there's other things that they can't help us with that we have to do all by ourselves. And what we have to do all by ourselves is when we take our next step in spiritual progression. He says, when you're faced with your next step, You won't have me or Jesus or any your mom or dad or anybody, best friends or whatever, to help you with that step. You got to take that next step, just you and your soul and your God, all by yourself, to take it. And it'll even seem perhaps like God has deserted you when you take that step, because you have to take it all alone. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have help as you're getting to that step, because we have books, we have teachers, we have friends, we have stimulation from without. We're stimulated from without, but when that next step is actually taken, we've taken everything we've learned, and we have to figure out all alone how to apply it. And this goes against the grain of all the beginning students throughout the world. The beginning students want to grab the hand of some master and have the master pull him up to the fifth dimension, or salvation or something, or just say, I believe Jesus, and then now Jesus is going to come save you. But it doesn't really work that way. You're taught by the various teachers, the various great words, all the things that's out there available. They can stimulate us, they can give us knowledge, they can give us light. But then when the next step is taken, it's between you and you, pretty much, you and your higher self. And even, like I say, it may even seem like your soul has deserted you at specific times, because when you take that next step all alone, when you made that decision, then you have earned it. Then you are there and you won't go back. If some master comes and helps you along and to take that next step, you haven't really taken it, because then when that master leaves, you'll revert back, because you haven't really taken it if somebody is helping you with training wheels. So there's a certain aloneness in our progression. We have, like, say, periods of time after that period of peace, where you feel comfortable, you're learning things, you're with your group, you're sharing energy, all that's great. But then you will reach a point to where a step must be taken, and you must take it alone. And like he says, there is no one to tell him the way. He has to figure out, is this next step right? Was my teacher right? Was what I read in this book right? Was what I got from my inner self right? Am I supposed to do this? And it's up to you. And that's where you really learn more than anything, all the books in the world, is when you by your own initiative take your next step forward. So that's very important.
That's the thing is, when you start out on the path, there's always this question in your mind, well, will I know when I've made a step? And will there be a party? Will they give me a new badge, a new rank or something? And no, none of that happens. But the thing is, you will know. You will be aware that you are now aware that you have taken the step.
Right. And when you actually take a step forward, you will feel just a sense of almost relief, like, I know I've done the right thing. You won't know it beforehand. You may really question yourself beforehand, but after it's done, you'll have a sense, I'm really glad I did that. I made the right move,
Yeah, you will also have the sense that, yeah, there's another job for me. It just keeps on going. It keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm still on the path. I'm going to take that bigger job. I'm going to do my best to be whatever it is I've just stepped into.
Yeah, there's always something. And that's a good point, because when you do take the next step, that makes you more qualified for greater service. And so some higher life may take note and give you some inspiration as to something else you're supposed to do. Because a lot of our thoughts are not our own, especially for those that are treading the path of discipleship. You will often get thoughts that are planted in you from your higher self or a master that will you'll just sense something that you're supposed to do. If you get a sense of that, pay attention to it. It's really important.
Yeah, they'll send you after some golden apples.
Yeah, and labor's the Hercules there. Okay, the next thing that he talks about that's really important on the path is obey the inward impulses of the soul. That's kind of follows along with what we've been talking about there.
There's a clarity that comes when you know. You know, there's always a conscious clarity when you know what you're doing is right.
Yeah.
Like we're walking the labyrinth of life. You know, we have to follow it and see where it leads us.
Yeah, that's a great part, is especially when you do take the right, sometimes before you take the step, you question yourself, but when you do take the right step, you will have a knowing about it that, looks like I did the right thing after all. I thought I was following the soul, and now I know that I did the right thing. And yeah, I imagine you felt that way a number of times in your life, haven't you, Ed? When you did the right thing, you just felt really good about it?
Well, I've lived long enough to have done many right things and many wrong things.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I know when I've taken a wrong step, I really have felt it was wrong sometimes. Wished I could have backtracked.
When a discordant thought pops into my head, I feel it's wrong. I have a body sensation that tells me it's wrong, and when it's good, I have a gnosis. My path is what I call toward gnosis.
Yeah. Okay. So you're a part Gnostic then. Okay.
I'm a poet. I don't know it.
Another thing that ties into this is we've mentioned several times that if you want to become a greater kind of life, you begin by acting as if you already are that. And the science has just been showing lately that when you act as if you already are, that changes your body chemistry instantly. Your DNA begins to alter to be that who you are pretending to be, and that when your chemistry changes, it also in turn completely changes the environment. It's like if you're a fish and you're in water, you know, and you get up to where you're a land breather. It's like now you got to live. You can't live in the water anymore. Now you live in the air. It's an automatic process that happens when you begin acting as if you are this greater life.
Yeah, self-help gurus have been teaching that as-if principle for some time, and DK emphasizes it also. Now, he talks about obeying the impulses of the soul, but in order to obey the impulses of the soul, there's a big problem, is the disciple has to actually receive the correct impulses from the soul. And to do this, he must discern between, first of all, the instinct and the intuition. What's the difference between an instinct and an intuition? Let me see. Let's pick on somebody besides Rick here. Who haven't we called on? Let's call on Adam. Are you available?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. What's the difference between instinct and intuition, Adam?
Well, I'd say instinct probably mostly comes from your solar plexus. It's a gut feeling, a sensation of your astral body, whereas intuition would start in the head center and reach up to the world of ideas.
Right, right. So even animals have instinct. Like if you a deer that's hunted has an instinct as to how to avoid other animals that are deadly, and hunters that are deadly to them. They get these instincts, and we carry this over from the animal kingdom. We get gut feelings on things, and these are instincts. But intuition is a higher connection to the world of ideas, where once you intuitively perceive something, you just don't have a knee-jerk reaction, but you have a flash of understanding that comes to you, where you see and understand the principles behind something. So the disciple must understand, and in between that is a lot of solar plexus thing. Lower psychism operates on like higher instincts, but is not intuitive. Okay, and the second is the higher and lower mind. What's the difference between the higher and lower mind? Who wants to answer that one? I bet Cindy can answer that. We haven't called on her for a long time.
Well, I think the higher mind is that part of that, the higher manas, that part that can tap into the soul more easy, and the lower mind is like your lower concrete mind, where you're just kind of dealing with facts and that sort of thing. Higher mind is more susceptible to intuition.
Would you say the lower mind is kind of the computer brain?
Yes.
And that pretty much dies when you die, but the higher mind survives death. And so look at the lower mind like a computer. Now, some people have better computers than others. Now, you can take a very intelligent person with a slow computer and not very intelligent person with a very advanced computer, and the guy with a slow computer can produce more intelligent stuff than the guy with a fancy computer. And so with a regular IQ test, the main thing they determine is how good of a concrete mind the person has. And it doesn't it's not really a true measure of true intelligence. It's a measure of how good of a computer the guy is working with. And so what we do with our equipment, all of us have pluses and minuses in our physical bodies. None of us probably have perfect physical bodies, but the important thing is to use our higher mind to make the best use of the equipment that we have. And to follow the impulses of the soul, the person needs to put attention on the higher mind, because the higher mind is linked to the soul. The lower mind, the concrete brain, is not. And so this is why the disciple must distinguish between higher and lower mind. The higher mind can understand the intuition, can contact the intuition. Okay, the next thing, he must understand the difference between desire and spiritual impulse. Now that's kind of my, maybe take a little bit of thought. We'll maybe call on our expert Ed to see if he can tell the difference between those two.
Well, I think inspiration comes from the higher self. The inspiration is the more or less the correspondent to desire. I say that I use the word aspire instead of desire. Desire says, Lord, please buy me a Mercedes Benz. My friends all drive whatever. Yeah. But we've been told throughout the ages that to go into that upper room, which is that space between the pituitary and the pineal gland, go into the upper room in secret, and the Lord will reward you openly. That's the secret has been given simply. And we try to make it complicated, but it's simply that. Put your attention into that point of focus.
That's a good point. And one of the main differences is desire is centered around what you want to do for the lower self. Spiritual impulse is connected with the higher self and service. So if you get what you think is a spiritual impulse and it's just for your lower self, it's probably just coming from your own self. If you get an impulse and it tells you something that's going to help humanity, then you have probably got a higher spiritual impulse. Okay, now the next thing he says, difference between selfish aspiration and divine incentive. Selfish aspiration and divine, that's kind of links in with what we were talking about there. In other words, aspiration is the key there. Let's see, anybody got any comment on that one? What's the difference between selfish aspiration and a divine incentive? Again, the selfish aspiration is where you seek maybe self-improvement because you want to have more for you, more power for you, more this for you. And divine incentive is where you'll pick up something that you're supposed to do and you feel on fire about doing it, not for you, but as a servant for the whole. And once you get this mindset, this is one of the mindsets that's important in the making of a master. Okay, the last thing he points out, the person must, he says, the urge emanating from the lunar lords and the unfoldment of the solar lords. Okay, the lunar lords are the lower lives, the passions that will influence the disciple, and then the solar lords are the impulses from the higher self. Okay, he must differentiate between the higher self and the lower self is the basic message there. Okay, any comments on those differentiations?
Our eternal being is the Atma Buddhi Manas. That's where we should put our focus, and that's where divine inspiration comes from. The eternal self, the Atma Buddhi Manas.
And Atma Buddhi Manas, what, for those who aren't familiar, what does those three words mean?
Well, Atma is the power of the will. Buddhi is divine love, wisdom. And Manas is higher mind.
Higher mind. That's right on cue, Ed. Okay, he says that it's common for the seeker to think he's following the higher way when he's really following the lower way. He must honestly examine his motives and honestly face and correct his flaws. He says the keynote is from Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. I think that was Shakespeare. I'm not positive there, but to thine own self be true. Okay, that's a keynote. And this is a big problem. If the person thinks he's following the higher way, say he may be doing everything for self, but deceiving himself that he's doing it for a greater cause. God wants me to, and all this. So we have to be really honest with ourselves, and being honest with ourselves is sometimes harder than being honest with other people. So to thine own self be true. He says, the disciple must pay no consideration to the prudential considerations of worldly science and wisdom. That's a kind of funny thing to say in this world where everybody's saying, well, we got to pay attention to everything the scientists say, the government says, the authorities say. People are very authoritative minded and they don't question what the authorities say. If they say we're gonna have a apocalypse in 10 years because of global warming, well, they don't question that. If they say you got to vaccinate your kids with 15 different vaccinations, people just swallow that without thinking about it. But he says the disciple will pay very little consideration to worldly wisdom. Does that mean he's supposed to ignore the wisdom of the world completely? Does that mean all the wisdom of the world is bad?
You have to be wise. You have to know that fire burns. You have to. There's things that are wise.
Right. Not all the wisdom of the world is bad, but not all of it is good. So what he's really saying here isn't to ignore all the wisdom of the world, because we need to take everything into consideration. Need to be open-minded. But what he's really saying is, just because the scientific experts, the government experts are saying something is true doesn't make it true. The disciple will look at it and examine it and understand it and question it. And this is one of the important things everyone that treads the path to become a master will do. He will question everything. I have a bumper sticker that says "Question reality." In the 60s, a really popular bumper sticker was "Question authority." And all the liberals back in the 60s had that bumper sticker on their car, and now the conservatives have that bumper sticker on their car. So it's kind of funny how everything goes full circle. But now the liberals are accepting authority, and the conservatives are questioning it, and it was all the way around back in the 60s. So he says, many seekers make the mistake of doubting their own soul in favor of outward authority and consensus. Okay, well, they also make another mistake. They make the mistake of not checking with their soul. If you're, say, in a group or in a classroom, and everybody in the class is learning something that established authorities all agree on, and everybody in the class is agreeing on it, then even some pretty high disciples just go along and they forget to check with their soul. So the thing is, always check with your soul. It reminds me of an experiment they did. I can't remember all the details, but it was like everybody was looking at some items on a table or something, and there was like 6 items, and everybody in the group was saying there was only 5. And at first, everybody was in on it except for one guy, and the one guy that wasn't in on it didn't know that everyone was predetermined that they were going to give the wrong number. Okay, so this guy enters a circle, and they were asked how many marbles or something was in the center. I can't remember what it was, and everybody says 5, and it's really 6. And they did this experiment with a number of people, and after about 3 waves of going through this, almost all of them agreed there was 5 instead of 6, even though with their own eyes they could see there was 6. So I found that fascinating, that people, because of powerful authority, will actually deny what they can see right in front of them. And that was that was very interesting, I thought. But it's kind of sad, and you can see this when you may be arguing with some people about things that are very obvious to you, and you present them with facts that are just plain as a nose on your face. If they've got a mindset that you are wrong, it doesn't matter how clearly you present the facts, they will not be true to themselves and look at it.
Don't confuse me with the facts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I got a wife like that.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Better hope she doesn't watch the playback of this video.
Actually, we met his wife at the gathering, and she was a really sweet little gal. Okay, it says, it will be needful for the disciple to run counter consistently to the world's opinion and to the very best expression of that opinion, and this with frequency. He has to learn to do the right thing as he sees it and as he knows it, irrespective of the opinion of the earth's greatest and most quoted. Well, I don't feel bad being contrary to a lot of the popular ideas out there in the world today after reading this. Because yeah, as a disciple goes along, you begin to you become open to a lot of things. And this is what the disciple has to do, is he has to question everything that's out there. If they say the universe started with a big bang 13.6 million years ago, then, or billion years ago, then well, did it really? What happened before the Big Bang? What made the Big Bang happen? I mean, the disciple begins to ask a bunch of questions about this. And so that's the person that's not a disciple will just take down the facts. Earth created by, their universe created by a Big Bang 13.6 billion years ago. And
this universe didn't Big Bang. This universe is constantly breathing out and breathing in. Right now we're seeing it's breathing out.
That's right. Yeah, it's we have universes created, disappear, then they rematerialize and so on. But in all things, the disciple will question. He will question, and then he'll come up with answers that are against the mainstream. This is one of the steps that the disciple must be willing to take if he wants to become a master. Does this mean we just reject the wisdom of the world, or when should we reject it and when should we accept it? And the answer, of course, is you just got to check with your soul. You know, there's certain things like it's pretty much established the earth is a globe, yet there's still a lot of people that believe in a flat earth, and there's a movement that's growing. And I've had some arguments with these guys online, and it's amazing. But in this case, the accepted authorities are right. The earth is actually a globe. They did a survey a while back of millennials, kids like, I think, 18 to 25 or something like that, and 25% of them weren't sure the earth was round. 25%, I mean, that's an amazing number. That flat earth philosophy has really gained traction with a lot of the young people, and it's disturbing.
Well, that's like the question, which is closer, the earth or Florida?
Yeah.
Well, everybody knows it. I mean, the moon or Florida. Everyone knows the moon is closer because you can't see Florida.
Reminds me when my dad was a kid, he said the teacher of the class was telling him that we'll never go to the moon because even if you traveled 60 miles an hour nonstop, it'd take years to get there. So we wound up traveling like 25,000 miles an hour to get to the moon, so, or more. But the teacher couldn't imagine going faster than 60 miles an hour when my dad was a young guy.
Well, I heard the Italian astronauts are going to do one better. They're going to go to the sun.
Oh, yeah?
And someone told them that, well, you can't do it. The sun is too hot. And they said, well, we got it figured out. We're going at night.
Have you been reading joke books again, Ed? Okay. The fourth thing the person must do, and he says all these things sound simple, but they're hard to do in their fullness. Live a life which is an example to others. Now, that's something you were taught in Sunday school. Every person that teaches anything about spirituality will teach something like this. He says he shouldn't have to remind us about this, yet this is where many fail. And, you know, you see a lot of people when they approach enlightenment, they kind of go bizarre crazy. they start having affairs, get multiple partners. They just let all the old restraints from the established religion go, like because they feel that now they're enlightened, they can just go crazy and do whatever they want. And that's not what enlightenment is. And it's like the disciple is told in the book of Revelations, remember your first love. Okay, your first love was what you went through when before you say broke off from regular religion, and the disciplines you learn there should stay with you, so you can use them as a fulcrum for leverage toward enlightenment rather than just dropping them. So we need to keep that self-control and discipline that the regular processes put us through before we began the spiritual quest outside the box. And so oftentimes disciples, the people that are pretty advanced, are not very good examples as to how to live their lives. Another thing they do is mistake a lot make is they put all their attention on the spiritual and let the material go, so they wind up having to borrow money from everybody and and be a nuisance to everybody around them to help to support them, because they put all their attention on the spiritual. And this is a big temptation for disciples to not do their share to support themselves so that they can be self-sustaining and not be a burden to other people. And this is part of living the life which is an example to others. It says, many do not deal with the tasks at hand because they think they should be elsewhere doing something else. Seekers get too discouraged with difficulties and forsake their group, their friends, and mission before the work is done. They flee from themselves and from other people instead of simply living the life of service. So this is a problem. They think they always should be somewhere else. And sometimes in a group such as this, people say, well, this isn't proceeding fast enough. I need to be somewhere else doing something where I can really do something, get something done. And then he goes off and he doesn't get anything done. So oftentimes where we are at the moment is where the work to be done is, and the disciple is tempted to think he's supposed to be somewhere else doing something greater, when sometimes the important work is crossing the T's and dotting the I's and just doing the nitty-gritty work that needs to be done to move the group the next step ahead.
Grow where you're planted.
Yeah, that's a good statement, Ed. Next, he says a disciple must focus on harmlessness. He speaks no word which can hurt, harm, or wound. Therefore, he has to learn the meaning of speech in the midst of life's turmoil. Okay, harmlessness and speech, that's a very important one, and that's something that as a group gets together and they become more familiar with each other, it's easier to harm people with speech. When I have had a seminar or something and get a group together that doesn't know each other, well, you don't see anybody offending anybody else. People say whatever they want, nobody gets offended. But then when they get to know each other well, and they know each other's personalities and flaws, then it's a lot easier for somebody to say something offensive or to take offense. That's where the real test comes in, the closer you get to people. Just like when you meet your one and only that you married or had a romance with, you first meet this person, oh man, this person can do no wrong. I just love them like crazy. But then after you spend a year or so with them, get to know them, know all their flaws, and it's a much easier to be offended by this person. And so this is where overlooking not only do we have to overlook personality, but he says we have to be careful with our speech, that our speech carries nothing in it that can be interpreted as harmful. And this is very difficult, but it takes two sides. One side has to have a fairly thick skin so that maybe maybe the other guy says something that could be interpreted as harmful, but if you look to the person's heart, you might see, well, this person didn't really mean to hurt anybody. And if you see that, then you won't be hurt. But if you just see in the surface, it's much easier to be hurt when somebody says something fairly thoughtless, which we all do once in a while. And so the seeker must be careful with his words and careful about how he interprets the words of others, and that he makes sure he looks upon the soul.
Yeah, I've had friends that had difficulty playing well with others in chat rooms before, and they've asked me, well, how do you avoid that? I said, well, here's the best way. When you type a response to something that's just been said in a chat, before you hit enter, read it out loud to yourself and think of all the people that are in this room. How's this going to affect Joe? How's this going to affect Mary? You know, it's like, and you'll learn very quickly not to hit that enter until you've edited it back.
Yeah, and you can tell by reading on the various groups that a lot of people don't read their posts before they hit that enter key. They just type it out in an emotional storm and let it rip. And that's not the way of the disciple, of course. Okay, the disciple doesn't see himself as a victim, but realizes that his difficulties are of his own making. Now, how many people do you know that blame their difficulties on everything else? They blame it on their friends, their parents, their upbringing, their situation, Donald Trump, the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, Russia. They blame it on anything but themselves. Okay, so he points out that by our own thoughts and actions throughout our life and also our previous lives, we're reaping what we have sowed. And so we shouldn't see ourselves as a victim. If we have problems, then we have to figure out what we've been doing wrong and live our lives in such a way that this problem can be corrected. So accept responsibility. That's one thing I really loved about my mother was she had kind of a tough life, but she never complained and she never blamed her problems on anybody else. She took her responsibility and she just moved forward no matter what problems she had. And so I did really appreciate that about my sweet mother, who's long passed. Okay, any comments or questions before we move on? Is everybody determined to be their own master and not a victim?
One of my teachers from the 80s has a video on YouTube, and he says, who designs your problems? You think that God takes the time to design your problems?
Well, your reality exists only where the mind is focused. If you're having problems, you're looking in the wrong direction or something. You need to tune in.
Right. Some of our problems are actually designed by our own selves. Before we were born, we created certain problems that we could solve and grow through solving those problems. And then other problems we create after we're born. We get down here and maybe we encounter a design problem that we're supposed to solve, and then we create a bigger problem by making the problem bigger by ignoring it and moving on to something else and putting that in the background. And or maybe we we don't follow the plan of our soul, and we do something really wild and crazy, and we make bigger problems for ourselves. Maybe you go rob a bank or something in desperation, get wound up in jail, or you got a problem. Maybe your soul didn't design that. Maybe you just screwed up in this life. So whatever it is, whatever problem we have is pretty much of our own making. Now there's certain group influences that we can't get around, but the basic problems that really get to our core are generally our fault and our own making, and we got to figure out how to undo them and solve them on our own, and not blame other people, not see ourselves as having this problem because somebody else caused it or said something or manipulated your life so you're unhappy. See the problem as something that you can master, and energy follows thought. If you think you can master it, then you will. If you think you can't because Joe Smith over there created your problem and Joe Smith doesn't want to solve the problem, then what? You're stuck with the problem then, because you projected the solution on somebody that offended you. And if you do that and that person that offended you isn't doing anything, then then you're screwed. Okay, so accept the problem as yours and try to, this will give you power to solve it. Okay, we're near the end of our lesson. Any comments or questions before we sign off?
Well, Francis Bacon once said, there's nothing more troublesome in the state than when the cunning are taken for wise.
Yeah, that's a good quote. Do you have a book of all these aphorisms, or are you just in your mind there, Ed?
No, I have quite a bit of information on Francis Bacon. It's been that being has been very important in many lives that I've participated in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, any other comments or questions before we sign off?
JJ, do you have a date on the gathering this year yet?
We're thinking a similar date to last year. We haven't reserved a place yet. We're thinking of a place in Draper, Utah. It's a big lodge. And so we're kind of narrowing it down.
I think
probably sometime the first 2 weeks of September is what we're thinking.
Okay.
One of these years we should go to Ojai, California.
Yeah, except that's kind of expensive down there. There's only trouble. Anywhere you get down that direction, it's kind of pricey. But it's a nice area. Yeah. Unless you can get us a deal down there, Ed.
Well, anything that's worthwhile could be expensive, but you know, there are. I know people there, and I've stayed there at their house.
Yeah. Have you? Yeah. Well, we'll take that in consideration. Okay. Well, I'm glad everybody showed up, and we will look forward to seeing you next Sunday, 10 in the morning, Mountain Standard Time, all being well, and appreciate you coming. And want everybody to have a good week and enjoy the weather wherever you are.
I wish for you guys a wonderful week, and see you next Sunday.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
It's the same. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Life, love, and light, everybody.
Bye.
Gotta have Stacy say that before we sign off. See you, Solomon.
I said life, light, and love. Let that be your sword. Carry that.
You betcha. See you next week.
Peace, assuredness, goodwill, and love.
Yeah.